So this is Across the Bug River by VUCA Simulations. I've done a video on this before. I did turn 1. I was intending this to be turn 2. But I did a reset and started again on turn 1, which I'm partway through. The reason for that is because I was getting rules wrong, and in particular one very specific rule wrong, and it was and I wasn't making any progress as the Germans, and I was thinking I was playing them terribly badly, and I was probably playing them quite badly, but I was doing them no favours at all by getting rules wrong. And the critical rule I was getting wrong was this one here, 7.3.5 increased movement allowance of leg units, which essentially says that if you move a leg unit and at no point during its move, start or finish, it's adjacent to an enemy unit, then you can increase its movement allowance by 2, and that means that the Germans can move through all this open clear terrain and light forest terrain at the rate of 5 hexes rather than 3 hexes, and so they can punch a hole in the lines and then just go sprinting and start cutting all the Russian front line out of supply and out of command, and surrounding them and not giving them any retreat paths, and then mopping up the pockets of them that are left. And because they can advance so speedily, you put a massive amount of pressure on them to then try and organise some sort of screen. And you can see this group haven't even had a chance to react yet, and there are Germans right up here, and this is only turn 1. And if I wanted to use purple again, they've got 2 more activations, but I probably won't. But this sort of aqua green group have got at least 1 more activation I'll use. These greens I've not done anything with yet, they've not moved, but you can see how undermined the position is in here with stuff in behind. And I haven't done anything with the mechanised group yet. I've got a pontoon bridge in a better place as well for them. But you can see how far forward the blues are here. That I hadn't got this far forward on turn 2 in my previous playthrough. And it's all because I was getting this rule wrong. I was, to be fair, also kind of forgetting the reaction rule at times. But reaction moves are, in my view, fairly sort of desperation measures, because you get about half the number of action points, but it still costs you 1 of your activations on the track. So unless it's absolutely critical for you, you don't want to be trying to make reaction moves, because you're just getting fewer action points for your activation. But I suppose if it gets you out of a pickle, if it gets you to move, if you're the Russians and it gets you to withdraw a couple of units that are otherwise going to get swallowed up, then I suppose it might be worthwhile. Anyway, so we're back in turn 1. I've got a much more sort of grounded feel for how the combat works, how the movement works, and how the sort of situation is going to unfold, and feeling pretty good. Whereas in my first attempt at this, it felt grindy, and there was something dissatisfying about it, in that you couldn't really ever get behind the you didn't feel you could get behind the Russian defence, because you couldn't move quick enough, because you were plodding along at 3 hexes. And that's because I was making that rules mistake, and I think that one rules error was really hampering the German attempts to get across the board. And yeah, 2 hexes per activation if you're activating 3 or 4 times is massive. Massive. So the Germans making a lot greater progress here with me playing the rules as they're written, and so yeah, I was kind of getting bogged down and grumping a little bit about the game, and then I found out that I was making rules errors, and I looked at it and thought, no, that will have had a serious impact on the outcome, so I'd best go again and play it properly, and that's what I'm doing. So turn 1 redux, I've got about so I've got probably 4 activations with this green group, and probably 3 or 4 with the armoured, the mechanised group up here to do. The Russians want to activate here a couple of times, and they may want to try and get second front to activate and withdraw if necessary. Beyond that, they want to limit their activations so that they can be fresh next time round. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Position at the end of turn 1 then here. The revised turn 1 in Across the Bug River, VUCA Simulations. Much more fluid than the previous game that I was playing, so getting the rules right really does matter. The Germans at the end of turn 1 already pushing up to this sort of stream that seems to form something of a defensive, an obvious first defensive line for the Russians, and able to sort of surround these advanced sort of machine gun posts that the Russians have, you know, completely cut them out of command. So they need to put a disruption on this guy to cause attrition, but then it'll just wither away due to attrition losses. Similarly, you know, this guy here is isolated, this guy here is isolated, and so they don't really need to do too much more work other than complete, you know, push forward, and you know, a single attack should be enough just to demolish these, and then they can, you know, carry on working their way into these Russian positions and try and push in here. And the whole situation is just so much more dynamic and fluid than it was when I wasn't giving the Germans enough movement points every turn. I've also done a far better job of getting this motorised division on a road here, so you can see this division here. You know, they pushed up here as well and made an attack across the bridge, which didn't go very well, but well enough. Didn't take the town though. There's quite a lot of defenders in there, and they've got an improved position dug in behind them as well, which is giving them, you know, a supply route out and stuff, so they're not isolated or anything. Anyway, yeah, I feel like I'm doing a much better job with the Germans playing the rules correctly, but that also means I'm doing a much more interesting job with the Russians, who are now having to scramble to get in to find defensive positions, whereas in the previous iteration it felt like they just had all the time they needed to, you know, withdraw, because they could withdraw at the same rate as the Germans could attack, and you know, just pull back out of combat and reset and dig in, and it felt like World War One rather than World War Two. Anyway, you know, very slow and attritional and stodgy, whereas this is much more dynamic, and I'm enjoying it much more as a result. And I was enjoying it quite a lot before, but I was a bit surprised by the sort of dynamics of the situation. It wasn't what I was expecting for a Barbarossa game at all, and this is much more like it. So I'm just doing the admin phase for at the beginning of turn 2. These come at the beginning of turns, but there isn't a lot to do. You sort of reset the points on the tracks for how many activations each formation can have, and you do a little bit of recovery, but the Germans haven't got any replacement points. The Russians haven't got any damaged formations that they want to repair with crud, which is a pity for them. And so I think we're about to go into turn 2. Yeah, I've done all the reinforcements. Yes, we are. We're about to go into the operations segment of turn 2. And another thing I was getting wrong, is only a minor point, but that I kept looking at this track and thinking that the Germans had an interdiction of 1, and of course 1 is there, so I was playing the German initiative rolls all wrong last time round as well. They rolled 0 for the interdiction for this turn, which is normal. And they did last turn, and I was giving them a +1 benefit on all their initiative rolls, which was unfortunate. So all in all, I'm doing a much cleaner job of getting the rules right this time round, but also a much better job of understanding the implications of the supply rules, the command rules, the ability to get past things and pocket them and isolate them and so on. Yeah, just feeling much more comfortable with the system, and the game is vastly improved from my point of view as a result, even though it's a pain that I'm making videos on stuff that I'd already done. Anyway, I still think the turn 1 video I made sort of stands as a commentary on the game. It's not it's not like I was expressing dissatisfaction with it, and I was showing quite a lot of, you know, the combat and the movement and the activation and so on. Yeah, just little things that can make a big difference. So onward. So I did finally make it to the end of turn 2 here in Across the Bug River. This has been set up for quite some time, and obviously I replayed turn 1 trying to get the rules correct, and carried on through turn 2. Germans have made quite a lot of progress here up to this sort of almost halfway across the board, this railroad line that runs up through there, and the Germans have got onto that railroad line and are trying to surround this city here. They get conditional victory points for capturing this city before turn 3 while they've taken it in turn 2. They need to take this by the end of next turn, and this place, Lakachi, by turn 4 if possible, and then push up towards the edge of the board and start getting all the victory point locations over here. So yeah, they've made good progress. You can see the Russians have can't really do a lot more than fall back and try and force the Germans to slow down. So that's what they've done, just a sort of perimeter along here that you can see, and it actually takes a lot of activations just to move a whole division forward. So yeah, we've reached this point. These guys are a little bit further back, but generally the German line is somewhere down just in front of this railroad. So yeah, there's a lot of reinforcements to come on now in turn 3. Another German Panzer Division, 13th Panzer Division, to come on, and the Russians are also going to get an anti-tank artillery brigade and a rifle division to come on, and then they'll get a rifle mechanised tank division later in the game. So yeah, I've got all these reinforcements to do, and the admin of undisrupting units and bits and bobs like that before we get stuck into turn 3, and I'm hoping to make a little bit quicker progress with the next couple of turns. So I've got to the end of turn 3 in Across the Bug River here by VUCA Simulations, and the Germans just about took this town up here and scored the VPs for it. I'm not keeping track of VPs particularly yet. I suppose I should start, but they captured this prior to turn 3 and therefore scored the two sort of discretionary victory points for that. So I think they're on a maximum score at the moment, the maximum they could have so far, because they've taken all the optional cities, and actually big breakthrough here in the Russian line, which was incredibly thin. Just, 2 German infantry divisions facing, virtually nothing, punched straight through here and had actually lunged forward and captured this city of Lakachi here, which is also an optional victory point. I think they need that by turn 4. Well, they've taken that on turn 3 as well. Although this guy is currently out of command, I should stick an out of command marker on him just to show that he is out of command range of the HQ back here. But yeah, big extension by the Germans along this stream out to Lakachi, have taken that as well. The Russians trying to throw up something of a second perimeter here, at least in the objective hexes, with some of their reinforcements, but it's very thin. And they've got a bit of a line here in front of 11th Panzer. How long it lasts remains to be seen. And the German reinforcements, 13th Panzer, this group here, have swung round from where they started up there. Didn't want to get bogged down in all this up there. Just going to leave that to the 298th Infantry, the Blue Infantry Division, and 11th Panzer to deal with that lot. And they swung down here across this pontoon bridge and are now hoping to exploit this same gap with some of these roads up here through to Lakachi and then up onto the main road here, and they'll try and make a push for the exit over there in the coming turns. So that's the German plan. We've got some shape to the situation now after a couple of turns, and the game gets more interesting actually at this point as you get things like breakthroughs here, suddenly it does become quite difficult to know what to do as the Russians, because you've got stuff that desperately needs doing up here because you're under pressure and there's stuff taking casualties and it's disrupted, and you need to try and get a defence reorganised, and at the same time you've got reinforcements back here that you'd like to push forward into more of a defensive line because they're just hanging around doing nothing. And yeah, it's difficult to know what to do, and then the Germans lunge forward and take something and you think, damn, I could have defended that if I'd taken an action, but I didn't because I needed to try and get some coordination of my forces up here, or an HQ was in trouble and needed to drop back somewhere. And so there's more of an ebb and flow as the pressure builds. The opening turns, certainly the opening turn, the first turn, maybe even the first two, are a little bit obvious, I suppose is the way to put it, or at least I found it that way in this playthrough. But now that there's pressure on, it's certainly, as a defender, it's quite hard to know what to activate because you want to activate everything at once. And I suppose the Germans could be looking at it and going, well, I've got opportunities here, here, and here. Which one's my biggest opportunity? And that's quite tricky as well. Not really knowing where I stand in terms of victory. It's quite hard to make those judgments. I suppose at the end of the game, I'll know whether the Germans, were aggressive and quick enough, or whether they weren't. So. But right now it's really hard to judge how you're doing as an attacker. You're making ground. Obviously, it's Barbarossa and the Russians are in a pickle. It's more, are you making ground quick enough, fast enough, aggressive enough? Are we taking enough casualties and enough risks? It doesn't feel like we are. We're not taking many casualties at all, but who knows? Who knows? Anyway, end of turn 3, coming into turn 4, the Russians have got the second half of a rifle division coming on as reinforcements. We've got to undisrupt some stuff and replenish our sort of activation points over here. And then we'll be into turn 4. I think I'm going to upload this now though, because it's been ages since I actually put any videos up at all. So I think I'm going to edit this together and upload it and carry on for the rest of the game in a new series.